Brazil has done the unthinkable, jailing Jair Bolsonaro for plotting a coup. 27 years behind bars for the man who once led Latin America's largest nation. Judges call it proof of a criminal plan to kill democracy itself. Trump calls it a witch hunt. Brazil celebrates, protests, and fractures. September 11th marked a day Brazil will never forget. In a cramped courtroom in Brasilia, 5 Supreme Court justices made history by convicting former President Jair Bolsonaro of plotting to overthrow democracy itself. The sentence was brutal, 27 years and 3 months behind bars for the man who once commanded Latin America's largest nation.
I believe, and I will say up front that to me, it provided conclusive proof that a group led by Jair Messias Bolsonaro, composed of key figures from the government, the armed forces, and intelligence agencies, developed and implemented a progressive and systematic plan to attack democratic institutions with the aim of undermining the legitimate alternation of power in the 2022 elections and weakening the exercise of the other constitutional powers, especially the judiciary.
The conviction stems from Bolsonaro's alleged attempts to overthrow the results of the 2022 election after losing to current President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva. 4 of 5 Supreme Court justices voted to convict the 70-year-old former army captain on 5 serious charges: leading an armed criminal organization, attempting to violently abolish democracy, organizing a coup, and damaging government property during the January 8, 2023 storming of government buildings.
Nowhere in the world, and least of all here, is there absolute immunity against the virus of authoritarianism, which insinuates itself insidiously, distilling its poison to contaminate freedoms and human rights. Quite often, certain groups have cynically sustained it, usurped by anti-democrats. They tried to take advantage of the holders of those same rights.
The evidence presented painted a disturbing picture. Prosecutors alleged that Bolsonaro's coup plot began as early as 2021, involving systematic efforts to undermine public trust in Brazil's electronic voting system. But perhaps most shocking were the allegations that the conspiracy included plans to assassinate President-elect Lula da Silva, Vice President Geraldo Alckmin, and Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes using explosives, weapons of war, or poison. Justice Alexandre de Moraes, who presided over the case, emphasized the gravity of Bolsonaro's actions.
What was seen during the 4 years of the mandate was the implementation of a criminal organization, led by the defendant Jair Messias Bolsonaro, to put into practice the plan of institutional rupture through a coup d'etat and the end of the democratic state of law. Therefore, the guilt is unfavorable, as are the circumstances of the crime equally unfavorable because they show that the criminal, coup-mongering acts and attacks on Republican institutions resulted from planning, organization, structuring, financing, and execution by this crucial core of the criminal organization, led by Jair Messias Bolsonaro. It is also unfavorable, as is the gravity and widely unfavorable intensity of the motives for the criminal practice.
The court also convicted 7 of Bolsonaro's allies, including 5 military officers, marking the first time since Brazil became a republic 140 years ago that military officials have been punished for attempting to overthrow democracy. The conviction immediately triggered a fierce response from Washington, where President Donald Trump has emerged as Bolsonaro's most vocal international defender. When asked about the verdict by reporters on the White House lawn, Trump expressed shock and dismay.
I watched that trial. I know him pretty well. Foreign leader. I thought he was a good president of Brazil. And it's very surprising that that could happen. That's very much like they tried to do with me, but they didn't get away with it at all. But I can only say this. I knew him as president of Brazil. He was a good man. And I don't see that happening.
Trump's administration has already imposed significant economic and diplomatic pressure on Brazil over the case. In July, the US implemented 50% tariffs on most Brazilian goods, though some exports like passenger vehicles and aircraft components were later exempted. The Treasury Department also sanctioned Justice Alexandre de Moraes personally, accusing him of authorizing arbitrary pre-trial detentions and suppressing freedom of expression. Secretary of State Marco Rubio escalated the rhetoric further, posting on X,
The political persecutions by sanctioned human rights abuser Alexandre de Moraes continue, as he and others on Brazil's Supreme Court have unjustly ruled to imprison former President Jair Bolsonaro. The United States will respond accordingly to this witch hunt.
Trump's personal reaction was equally emphatic.
I know President well, but I know him as a leader of a country. And I always found him to be very straight, very outstanding. Actually, as a man, a very outstanding man. I think it's a terrible thing. Very terrible. I think it's very bad for Brazil.
Brazil's foreign ministry pushed back strongly against American pressure, issuing a statement calling Rubio's comments a threat that attacks Brazilian authority and ignores the facts and the compelling evidence in the records. The historic conviction has split Brazil down the middle, revealing the deep polarization that has gripped the nation since Bolsonaro's rise to power. In the capital, Brasilia, scenes of celebration and protest unfolded simultaneously as news of the verdict spread. At a bar in the capital, Bolsonaro opponents gathered to celebrate what they saw as justice finally being served.
On behalf of the 700,000 people who died during COVID, today they rest in peace. Justice has been served.
Meanwhile, outside Bolsonaro's home, his supporters maintained their belief in his innocence and called for American intervention.
What we expect from the U.S. is help. We are asking for help from the U.S., a country that has a history of fighting communism and has seen that the injustice here is clear and has already crossed the borders of Brazil. Not only the U.S., but the entire world is seeing what is happening. A tremendous injustice, not just a scandal, but an injustice.
The conviction comes at a crucial moment in Brazilian politics, with the 2026 presidential election approaching and questions swirling about whether Bolsonaro can mount a comeback. He was already barred from running for office until 2030 due to previous convictions, but this latest ruling could extend that prohibition and potentially keep him behind bars for the rest of his life.